In this video, I would like to go through what kind of mods I do to my switches to make them feel better, a comparison between the stock version of different linear switches, and a sound test at the end of my Lubed Gateron Blacks. So stay tuned. So first things off, I would like to go over switch films. That is the first mod I do to my switches. And what they are the small little plastic pieces that go in between the top and bottom part of your housing to reduce the wobbliness of the housing itself and make the switches a lot more stable. I've tested it myself on my current keyboard. I've used about my Gateron Blacks for a week, and after I applied this I could instantly feel how stable the switches were compared. So I do recommend it a lot, and it costs about $5 international for 110 switch films, so it's a really cheap thing to get. And also you get it in a small neat little envelope with a guide on how to do it, and the films themselves, of course. So to apply the switch film you need a switch opener, your switch of course. Then you just open up the switch to remove the top and bottom part of the housing. Remove it with the stem and the spring. Then grab the bottom housing. Let me focus on a bit. Then you grab your switch film right here, and then just line it up, the large hole with the bottom half, or with the bottom part of your house. You insert it and get it flat on the switch. Then you just push it back and forth to make it like fit snugly. And that is everything you have to do to your switch. After that you just reassemble the switch by adding the spring on, adding the top part of the housing. Remember to line up the feet against the metal leaf plate, and then the top part of the housing. Then you just gently press down. It will move the switch film a bit around, so you can first insert and see how the switch film is. If it doesn't fit snugly, then you can reopen your switch and just push it back and forth, and then push it down again. Make sure that you look around the whole switch. As you can see, there's a little gap. You just want to push them down till it's all tight. Then your switch film is done. The other mod that I use is lubing the switches, of course, and I will show you how I like to lube mine. So there are 3 different kind of tools that you need. Of course you need a switch opener or just a flathead screwdriver to open your switch. You need a pencil to apply your switch and a lube of your choice. Today I will be using the Tribosys 3204 to lube my Yacht Trash Panda, which is a linear switch. Tribosys 3204 is a semi-fluid grease in the medium thickness range. In my previous how to lube video I used a silicone based lube, which I do not recommend anymore because it is a liquid based and tends to flow around in your switch. It sometimes even flow out of your switch depending on how much you use. The one I used was of course very thin, so I used a lot of it on my Holy Pandas to get a more smooth feeling. And after I removed the switches from my case, I found a lot of the lubricant had already flown out of the switch and onto the case itself, and I had to wipe my case down. I'm not sure if it flowed down to the PCB, but I hope not. So I do not recommend to use a silicone or oil-based lube, but rather grease. Also, after a month of use, the switches didn't really feel as lubed anymore as they used to. So a grease would last longer and it would work better in my opinion. So to start off you need to just open the switch as I have already done, remove the different parts. Also, if you're using switch films, I do recommend to apply the switch film before you start lubing. It just makes it a lot easier. So to start off, I like to grab my pencil and apply a bit of lube to the tip. Not too much. Here. And then grab the bottom part of your housing and the two sides where the stem are moving. You just want to apply a thin layer on that. I like to do about 3 strokes. You can see that the lube is pretty shiny inside there. And do that to both sides. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Some people like to lube around the middle part, but I rather just put a bit of extra lube on the spring itself. So grab your spring and just lightly apply the rest of the lube that you have in your pencil to the spring itself. Now you see that there is quite a layer on it. You just put the side that you lubed down into the switch. At this point I like to grab a bit more lube. Just quick dip. And you use that lube to apply a bit more on the top of the spring, the part that will be touching the stem itself. You don't have to spread it around as much, but just lightly tap so there's lube on top of it. After that I like to lube my stem, and then I'll just like to hold the top part like this and apply lube to the side of it. I start just lightly with one side, then I turn over to the other side and apply the rest of the lube there. In the guides they recommend you you do not want to see white. If it's white, then it's too thick of a layer of lube. It doesn't matter if it's like a bit white, we just try to spread it out evenly. And for linear switches you also want to apply lube to the feet. This will make it a lot smoother, and on, for example, tactile switches it will remove like almost all the tactileness from it. So that's why you do not use it on tactile switches, but only on linear. Then you just want to lube around the whole switch, like the front part, also the back part. After that you just spread your lube evenly around the whole switch until you see a very thin layer. After that you just want to insert your stem back onto the switch. Grab your top housing and just insert it. Since you have a switch film, you have to make sure that the switch is all the way down on all sides. And just make sure that your switch film is lined up properly. And here it looks perfectly fine. I will grab my other trash panda so I can show you the difference in sounds after I lube the switch. Here is before I lubed it. You can kind of hear that it is very scratchy. And here is after I lubed it. It removed basically all scratchiness and it made the switch a lot smoother. So that is how I lube my switch. Now I'm going to compare the different linear switches that I have on hand, which are the Telios, the Helios, the Novel Keys Cream, the Yak Trash Panda, and MX Cherry Reds, which I have used for a few years, and also of course the Gateron Blacks. The most important part about linear switches, in my opinion, is how smooth they are. So to compare the stock versions, I'm going to rank them on a scale from 1 to 10, where 10 is the smoothest. So the smoothest one I have on hand are definitely the Telios and Helios switches. These switches are just incredibly smooth and feels great to press. The downside of them are of course the very high price point of about $12 for twin switches. That is quite a steep price. If you want to fill up 10 kilos cuber, for example, need to spend about above $100 just to fill it up. But if you have the money, I would definitely recommend them. And the second one on the list are actually the Gateron Blacks. I have stupidly enough, of course, lubed all of them, so I can't like directly compare the sound of them right now. But I used the Gateron Blacks unlubed and without switch films for about 1 week, and they felt great. I have no complaints about them, and they are overall just a great switch and at a very cheap price point of around $2 to $3 for 10 switches, depending on the store, of course. After that, there's the Novel Keys Cream. This one is just a bit too scratchy, in my opinion. I give this one a 7 for the stock version, and they make like quite a loud scratchy sound comparing like to the Telios. The Helios is of course the same as the Telios, just a dampened version. Like comparing the Helios to a Lubed Black, it's even a lot quieter than that again. So if like sound is your concern, I would definitely go with Helios. For the last two switches, I would give the Yak Trash Panda and the Cherry MX Red a 6. These two switches doesn't feel that great overall, in my opinion. So that is my comparison of the different linear switches that I have. And to round this video off, I'm just gonna show you a type test of my Lubed Blacks. I will use a different microphone and camera for this. I will use my Samsung Galaxy S10 because in my opinion that picks up the sound a lot better, and I already have a video on my unlubed blacks, so you can directly compare the unlubed blacks to the lubed blacks on my channel. So I would like to thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.